Welcome back to opinionsaretefree.com. It's a site where you can leave your opinion on various topics and subjects you may want to have an opinion on. In any case, the difference between our site and many others is that we do not allow a respondent to, slap you if they don't like your answer or your opinion. I was on another social media platform, and I was discussing this with a colleague. And I said, why is it that so many of the conversations start off okay, but then they quickly deteriorate into insult and fighting? And it's just the way it is on many of the other platforms, or even on some of the comment sites related to news stories. When you go into the comments section, and rather than having a comment about the actual subject or topic, it turns into insult and injury, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's kind of damaging our ability to discuss things rationally. In any case, let's not really talk about that right now. I want to just welcome you, and I want to talk to you about tariffs for a moment. If we listen to some of the so-called debate in the most recent presidential debates, again, if you want to call them that, there's not a lot of talk about tariffs. I mean, Trump wants to put more tariffs on China, and Harris doesn't want to turn back any of the existing tariffs, but hasn't really made an opinion one way or the other. And that can change in a week, because apparently her opinion changes quite a bit. That's just my opinion. I don't want to get into that. But let's look at tariffs for a second. Now, they or at least Trump wants to put tariffs on Chinese EVs. And in Canada, the Trudeau government wants to put 100% tariff on Chinese EVs at the time of this recording, and it's mid-September 2024. But let's think about this for a second, okay? Tariffs are essentially taxes. The duties, taxes, tariffs, whatever you want, it's all the same thing. It's just a cost imposed by an importing jurisdiction or government on the exporting jurisdiction or government, basically saying that the stuff that you're sending into our country should cost more. You're dumping it, therefore we're going to bring the price up in order to protect our domestic market or our domestic manufacturing for a similar type item. Now, that may seem to make a lot of sense, but there are over 100 Chinese EV companies in existence. And the reason there are 100 Chinese EV companies is because people want them there. It's a lot of adoption. Adoption in the U.S. and Canada is slowing down a bit, with roughly 18 to 20% people saying that they might look at an EV. They tend to prefer hybrids, because not all the trust really isn't there when it comes to EVs. Not only the cost of the batteries, and also the reliability of the charging platforms. Now, again, we're talking about two different societies, where in China they can basically say, we're going to put these in, and that's all there is to it, because it's an authoritarian government, whereas Canada and the U.S., they want to try that, and they're quickly told to buzz off by a population that doesn't really want to be told what to do. So the adoption in that case might be a little bit slower. However, if you just look at the cost for a second, one of the reasons, again, EV adoption, although it's picking up slowly, it's not really blasting off in North America, is because of the cost, with the average EV in the U.S. around 46,000 American dollars and up to 56 if you want to get the extended range models, which, when you're living in a rural area, that extended range is the difference between running out of fuel or electricity halfway to where you're going and not. In my case, I'm in a rural area in Ontario, and I could not justify the cost of an EV, which would have been around $73,000 Canadian, or 5 cases of American beer, because, again, the range just wasn't sufficient. And my driving habits could put me anywhere between 30 kilometers a day and 600 kilometers a day. So it just wasn't practical, and I just decided to just wait. But even if they put 100% tariff on Chinese cars, Chinese EVs, it still will not make me justify the cost of one produced in North America. It has nothing to do with the cost. So in many ways, the tariff is not really helping the consumer. It's actually hurting the consumer, because it's limiting their cost, or rather their selection, and it's actually buoying up the cost of the domestic product. Now think of it this way. If there were a bunch of Chinese manufacturers sending cars to North America, and if they passed all the emissions not emission, but they passed the safety protocols and whatnot, and let's say they were selling in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. I mean, they would sell very quickly, especially to younger people, city dwellers, students, whatnot, or people on a budget. But that would make it very difficult for the North American manufacturers to produce cars at the current price range. So what would they do? The North Americans would say, look, in order for us to maintain this production, we either need you to put tariffs on the imported goods or to subsidize our production or to subsidize the buyer's cost. Now, the first one, as I mentioned, will probably just increase prices for everybody. The second one, subsidizing the production, means that the taxpayer is now subsidizing the production of vehicles by private corporations. And don't ever fall for this nonsense about the government is giving and the government is investing. The government does not have money. They take money from taxpayers and they pass it through one scheme or another, or one program or another, whatever you want to call it, to other groups or individuals or programs, whatever you want to call that. And when you're giving money to a corporation, like a private corporation, to produce vehicles, as an example, you're essentially using tax dollars to support that. There is a word for that, I think it starts with an F. In any case, if you don't then buy the manufacturers, you have to somehow give money to the consumers so that they can bridge the gap and be able to afford these vehicles. But again, tax dollars are being used to support the purchase of material from a manufacturer that's not produced at a price point that the consumer wants. And again, the taxpayers are on the hook. So if you see your neighbor driving a nice EV that they bought through a subsidy program and you can't afford one, well, your taxes went to that person. So that system isn't very, very fair either. I got to wonder if it would make more sense for the North American markets to come together and say, look, we cannot produce the lower price point EVs. So why don't we do this? Why don't we import those from the Chinese manufacturers, bare bone? Then we bring them in here and then we redo the electronics by North American standards, because I don't think you want to be driving a car that has Chinese electronics, nothing to do with the Chinese, but there could very well be a connection there to the People's Party. Okay? Because you don't know what the regulations are regarding the creation of and implementation of software in vehicles and how it relates to the government in China. And if you just import those over here and assume that everything is by North American standards and acceptable levels of privacy, you'd be out of your mind. So bring those in here, redo the electronics, bring them up to North American crash standards, if there are any differences, and then market them here as North American assembled Ford EVs. And you can do it at a price point that is above what the Chinese ones would have cost coming in without tariffs, and below the price points set by North American manufacturers that people aren't willing to accept. Now, the Chinese are already producing cars in Mexico, and that is one way they're going to try to get around the, the former NAFTA, but now it's USMCA, or I like to call it CAMUS, Canada, Mexico, US, to piss off Americans because they hate being at the back of that thing. They want to be at the front. But let's call it USMCA. And there are now regulations to stop that because they specifically said in the US, you know what, we're not going to let you just sneak vehicles in through Mexico. They're still imported EVs and they will still have tariffs. So there could be an answer in there somewhere. I don't know. I have my opinions. I've just voiced them. You probably have yours. So if you have an opinion on tariffs, specifically to EVs, or really anything else, by all means, leave your opinion at opinionsarethree.com. Just look for the little yellow box that has the word tariffs, fair or foe. And I'd love to hear your opinion. And as mentioned before, when you're leaving your opinion on opinionsarethree.com, you are not obligated to put in the identifying features such as your first and last name and your phone number and your address and all that. You just put your first name, maybe your last initial, and your demographic area or your geographic area, because I like to know if you're Paul M. from Pittsburgh, 46, or Guido G. from Guadalupe, age 17. I really don't care. But it gives me an idea as to who is leaving opinions on what area has a particular opinion, as opposed to another area. Anyways, opinionsarethree.com. Love to hear from you. And if you like this YouTube page, could you please just hit the like button? Just hit that like button. I'm not drawing an income from this, but I really would like to see more usership. And then eventually, I'll let you advertise on the page. But for right now, for the next couple of years, it's not. It's just for information purposes. And again, follow the rules, please. They're very, very simple. You don't bitch slap anyone else. You don't use profanity because this page is acceptable to younger people. And anything like that will not pass through. Have a great day, and hope things are going well for you. Bye-bye.